I knew something was wrong. Like, I remember telling one of my coworkers, like, something is wrong with me. And then we kind of just laughed it off, like, oh, you always think something's wrong. But I knew that this was serious. One of them was pain, specifically back pain, that did not get better with over the counter medicine or massaging or anything like that. I also had shortness of breath that got worse over time. When they came back and told me, things look like it could be cancerous, the first word that comes to mind is devastation. The tears that we cried that day. I know that I'll find out whether I'm in remission or not. And that's kind of, I don't know, I have a little anxiety about that. Hi, my name is Krystal. I am 42 years old. I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, IgM Kappa, June of 2022, and I currently reside in Georgia. I am a mother of two beautiful young adult daughters. I am an accountant, and I love light hiking, walking on trails, parks, painting, and just spending time with family when I can. Before I got diagnosed, I was experiencing just like some weird, I had pops that I would feel like in my body, and I was having tachycardia, heart palpitations, shortness of breath, um, and I also had like nausea, a loss of appetite as well. Back pain specifically, and my shoulder was hurting. And these things were not getting better with over the counter medicine. After I heard like and felt like the first pop, which was on my right side, like kind of chest area, I did go to the doctor, and they told me that I probably pulled a muscle. Um, and they did do a chest x ray, but that showed clear. And after that, like the shortness of breath would progressively get worse, as well as the heart palpitations. I went to the doctor probably the second week of June 2022, and I got an EKG done. It was normal sinus. And then the next day is when I felt another pop, this time on my left side, kind of chest area. I didn't go to the doctor because the time before I was told, I probably pulled a muscle. About a week after that is when I had felt and heard a really loud pop in my back, and fell to the ground. It was excruciating pain. Later on that evening, I ended up going to urgent care, and they did a bunch of test scans, and that's when they told me things on the tests and scans looked like it could be cancerous. At rest, my heart beating at 130 beats per minute is not normal at all. I just couldn't put my finger on it. I would blame it on, I'm getting older. I gained weight, things like that. And then, going to the doctor and they're like, oh, you know, you pulled a muscle, or, you know, the EKG is normal sinus. Of course, when I go at that time, when I get tested, it's normal sinus, but I'm like, there is something wrong. And, it was just extremely frustrating because I didn't have any answers, and I couldn't figure it out. But never in a million years would I have thought cancer. The first word that comes to mind is devastation. The tears that we cried that day. I mean, so many tears. It was just unbelievable, and it really felt surreal. Like, this cannot be happening. Like, no, y'all got it wrong. There is no way that I have cancer. Like, there's no way. And so my daughters were with me at that time, and just we were just heartbroken. And then kind of, I think, blanked out at that point, and I don't really remember anything else until like one of the days I was in the hospital. I had never heard of multiple myeloma. It was very confusing for me because they told me it was a blood cancer, but they're talking about my bones. I have extensive bone damage. I have lesions literally all over my body from the skull all the way down. So I was confused. Like, how is it a blood cancer, but you're talking about my bones all the time? Like, I was so confused. I did see a doctor while I was in the hospital, and she is still currently my oncologist. Um, I do see, or I did have a specialist for multiple myeloma, and I recommend anybody, if you have this, if you can, see a specialist that specializes in multiple myeloma. So I had that team of doctors as well. Um, that team was not what was best for me. I just feel like the communication wasn't there, and I really feel like they dropped the ball with me. And then so now I see another specialist, and this team is awesome, and I think that is why I feel like the last specialist, I just don't think they were monitoring me as close as I need. With my current specialist and their team, first of all, the communication is great. I can call them at any time, ask as many questions as I want. I'm always going to get an answer. If they don't know something, they're going to figure it out. Um, I am getting monitored. Right now, it's not as often. It was as often as every day, like even weekends, holidays. But right now, it's slowing down. Um, Blood work, I'm getting biopsies, bone marrow biopsies. I've, I'm getting bone surveys, which are x-rays, quite often. And like I said, I can call with any questions. They will call you back. I had a bone marrow biopsy done today. I've had several, probably about 10 to 13 since this happened 2 years ago. But can we just discuss why they haven't created another way to do this besides drilling a hole in my hip every time? When I first started chemo, it was August of 2022. Um, it was through IV. I was there for probably, you could expect to be there about 4 hours or so. And I think it started out where I would have to go twice a week for that IV chemo. I was really, really bad in the beginning. So I think I did pills as well. Those pills, I think, were like daily for 21 days and then off for a week. I did not feel really bad. I mean, I was sleepy because you have the pre meds. And then after the second treatment, I was starting to feel better. And so then after that, I just got better and better. But, it's once the myeloma started to get controlled. So yes, I've relapsed at least 2 or 3 times. And usually when I relapse, like, I know something's going on. I feel my body just feels prickly, is how I describe it. definitely the fatigue is a lot worse, and I get a little bit achy, and that's how I know, like, uh-oh, something's happening. I had my bone marrow transplant February 28th, 2023. Today is my transplant day. So my new birthday will be February 28th. Overall, I feel pretty good. I would say everything before the transplant is all the work. It's the before and the recovery. Um, the bone marrow transplant itself was literally like 10 minutes, and I felt fine. So before, you get a large dose of chemo, and that made me really fatigued, nausea, I didn't really vomit that often, but diarrhea. The fatigue was really, really bad. And then you get your transplant, and then you just kind of build up strength. You go through a basement period where you really, really feel bad, where your immune system is just plummeted down to like nothing. And then it builds up. And it took me about 2 weeks before I felt, good enough. And then that's really how long you're usually in the hospital. Well, at least for me, I was in there for 2 weeks. I had the big dose of chemo Sunday, and felt fine. Felt fine yesterday. Feel pretty good today. A little teeny bit of nausea, but nothing crazy so far. After my bone marrow transplant, I quickly relapsed. Bone marrow transplant lasted me maybe two, well, maybe even say 3 months at the most. And the specialist that I had, the old one, didn't have a plan. And so my oncologist was, trying to figure out, what to do next, under the direction of him. And that's where I feel like they kind of dropped the ball. Um, the myeloma had gotten out of control. And then finally, I started another chemo regimen. Um, and so that is when I started seeing the new specialist, with the consult and everything. And she was the one that was saying, you need CAR T, and, the bone marrow transplant did not work for you. So you need to do CAR T if you relapse again. And so we had a plan. So while I was in the hospital for like that month, I was thinking this is all like for the CAR T stuff. And they're like, no, this is just to get you stable so you can get the CAR T. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so then I had to do a lot of stuff. So I'm praying that that's the case, because I've had enough. And just like with the BMT, there's like a lot of stuff that you have to do just to get to the CAR T. I mean, there's so many appointments, so many tests, and then finally we get to the CAR T and did that. That only lasted, it took maybe 15 minutes for the actual CAR T. And it tasted and smelled like tomatoes to me. They say it can taste like tomatoes or cream corn for some people. So I was a tomato girly. I am at the hospital doing stem cell collection. I'm hooked up to the machine. I had really high fevers, chills, fatigue, that lasted for like 4 days. And then I was pretty good. And so after CAR T, I did have like, my body was kind of like sore. Um, but other than that, I've been really, really good. And with CAR T, they do daily, um, you have to go to the doctor daily for the first 21 days, well, at least the one that I had. Um, and then they're asking you a series of questions to check your memory and all that. And because it can affect you neurologically. I keep going and I keep fighting, for one, because I love life and I want to be here. I have two beautiful daughters that I want to be here with. Um, it's not my time to go yet. I am too young. I can't. So I have to fight. And I get through it and like nothing ever happened. Like people probably wouldn't even believe me when I tell them like all the things that have happened. But yeah, I've gone through it and I'm just a resilient person and I'm just truly blessed and I'm just thankful that I'm here and I'm going to keep fighting. My daughters are amazing. They have taken care of me throughout this whole time. They literally stopped their lives to take care of me. And I just appreciate them so much. We've gotten a lot closer and we were already close, but this just brings just a better bond because they are with me every step of the way.
Same, different times.
I'm never going to be that person ever again, unfortunately. But it's okay. It is hard. You think back like, oh man, I used to be able to do this, or, I used to be so lively, or, that is no more. It's hard and it's definitely challenging. It takes time to get used to, but I feel like once you get to that point where it's like, okay, I'm no longer that person. But I'm just a different version of that person, like I'm still the old Krystal, but I've just had to tweak some things. And once you get to that point, you'll be fine. It took me a while though, and like even now I'm kind of hard on myself. So just giving myself grace, learning how to do that. Living with multiple myeloma is an incredibly challenging, devastating, overwhelming situation. But it's a roller coaster with waves of emotions. But at the same time, I feel like I have become a more resilient, better person because of it somehow. I always feel like myeloma has taken literally everything from me, right? It's taken my vision at one point. I couldn't walk. I was using a wheelchair. I was in excruciating pain, all of these things. And I've had strokes. I've had everything, right? But I've come out of it like nothing ever happened. So as hard as myeloma is, you can still come out of it and still rock it